Welcome to 10 for 10, the podcast that delves into 10 modern Israel concepts, each for about 10 minutes. We are Dr. Tal Grinfas David and Dr. Jonathan Golden. And today's episode will ask whether Jewish immigration choices are driven by the same push and pull factors as others from the same waves, or whether individual Jewish choices cause some to think differently about their opportunities. Ever since Lech Lecha, when Abraham journeyed to a land that he would be shown by the Holy One, Jews have been leaving behind everything that they know and uprooting to the land of Israel. Which push and pull factors have caused Jews in the modern era to immigrate to and immigrate from Israel? Historians tend to categorize Jewish immigration to Israel in ways of aliyot, but even within those, individuals made different choices. While some chose to move to Israel, others chose democracies like in North America, where they felt they could experience religious freedom and economic opportunity. Let's take a look at the stories of some individuals who chose not only to move to Israel, but to stay there and embrace their roles in supporting the state. Tal, what makes Natan Sharansky such an iconic immigrant and figure in the history of the state of Israel?
Natan Sharansky's story is remarkable among the stories of individuals who make up the former Soviet and Eastern Bloc of Aliyot. It would be enough to tell you about his intelligence and how he beat the world chess champion Kasparov. It would be enough to share that he was hired to work for a secret state research laboratory after graduating university. At a time when 3 million Soviet Jews were discriminated against and largely denied exit visas, his application for emigration in 1973 was among the 1,300 denied on the basis of refuseniks, who, due to their knowledge of state secrets, were charged as political dissidents with high treason, imprisonment, hard labor, and even at times the death penalty. It would be enough to tell you that he survived 9 awful years in prisons and a gulag, enduring torture, solitary confinement, and being force-fed when on hunger strike until he was freed in a prisoner exchange. But his life after Sharansky immediately emigrated to Israel was even more remarkable. He chose a life of public service, exemplifying modern Zionism. He went on to lead a life of service in politics, forming the party Israel Ba'aliyah, which is a play on words, meaning Israel is on the rise, and also Am Israel is immigrating. He served as Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Industry and Trade, and Minister of Internal Affairs. Then he led several NGOs, including as the chair of the executive of the Jewish Agency for Israel. He championed human rights as an activist his whole life. I remember when he traveled to Ukraine in March 2022 at the outset of the war with Russia, and on Shabbat he addressed the Jewish community with hope for safe haven, saying this: "The world has changed. When I was young in Donetsk, the single designation on one's ID papers that stood out was Jew. If that was written as your identity, it was as if you had a disease." He went on to say, "This week, I was reminded of those days when I saw thousands of people standing at the borders of Ukraine trying to escape. They are standing there day and night, and there is only one word that can help them get out: Jew. If you are a Jew, there are Jews outside who care about and are waiting for you. There is someone on the other side of the border who is searching for you. Your chances of leaving are excellent. You have a place to go where your family, an entire nation, is waiting." In light of the challenges that many Soviet Jews faced, which are described in the guide, and with some 51,000 choosing to leave Israel, Sharansky's life exemplifies someone who not only chose to stay in Israel, but to champion it around the world as the only place from which Jews can truly pursue human rights for Jews and for others oppressed around the world. His political and humanitarian leadership make him one of the torchbearers of modern Zionism.
That brings back a personal memory for me. I think back to December of 1986, when I traveled to Israel with my family, a trip where I had a second bar mitzvah ceremony at the Kotel and saw Israel as a whole for the first time. I remember standing on the balcony of my Tel Aviv hotel, watching Israeli dance by torchlight. When we asked why people were dancing, we were told that it was a celebration of Sharansky and other refuseniks who were finally granted the opportunity to travel home to Israel.
It is always moving to see how Israelis welcome Jews escaping plight to the one land where their freedom is guaranteed. Jonathan, why did you choose Harav Ovadia Yosef as another iconic representative of immigrants to Israel who really stand out?
I think the story of Ovadia Yosef epitomizes bringing the marginalized into the mainstream. He brought new religious voices into Israeli politics and empowered Mizrahi Israelis to stake their claim at the center of Israeli society, rather than in the periphery. Born in Baghdad in 1920, Ovadia arrived in Israel at the age of 4. A rabbinic prodigy, he received his ordination at the age of 20. After a brief stint as head of the Beit Din, or Jewish court in Cairo, Yosef returned to Israel after its establishment to join a rabbinical court in Petah Tikva. By 1973, he became the Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel. And then by 1984, he became the spiritual leader of the Shas party, a party representing the interests of Sephardic and Mizrahi Israelis that often was a king-making party for the ruling political coalition in the Knesset, Israel's parliament. His funeral was attended by 800,000 people, which was 10% of Israel's population at that time. In his career, he championed the concept of, quote, restoring past glory as a way to encourage the Mizrahi community to be proud and strong. He also issued innovative religious rulings, including permitting boys and girls to study together until the age of 9. A common theme of his leadership included lenient rulings that were inclusive and responsive to the changing needs of Sephardim and Israeli society.
Yes, I agree. And I also find him remarkable because just prior to his death, he encouraged the Orthodox Jews to serve in the IDF at a time when other Haredi parties are refusing to enlist. It showed his appreciation for the state and the security that it afforded Jews to live religiously and study Torah. His choices seemed to me to be very pragmatic.
Yes, and they not only benefited his community, but it was his leadership that paved the way for mass immigration of Ethiopian Jews to Israel. He argued that they were halakhically Jewish when other rabbinic leaders questioned that fact.
Yeah, you mentioned the Ethiopian Jewish waves Harav Ovadia Yosef encouraged. And I remember the celebrations in Israel when I was teaching high school. And we were asked to absorb a large number of Ethiopian Jewish teens into our school, many of whom didn't speak Hebrew very well or have any math competencies. I also remember the discrimination and economic hardship that this wave faced as they tried to integrate without losing their cultural identity. I want to highlight Pnina Tamano-Shata, an Ethiopian Israeli who came to Israel at the age of 3 in Operation Moses through Sudan, in which some 7,000 Ethiopians were airlifted by the Mossad. She was a well-known figure for breaking through stereotypes and glass ceilings, having studied law and having worked as a reporter for Channel 1 News. In 2014, she became a Knesset member. And then in 2020, she was appointed as Minister of Immigration and Absorption, where she helped integrate thousands of new immigrants. What to me was most striking was seeing her on the tarmac of Ben Gurion Airport and watching her welcome Ukrainian Jewish refugees from the war with Russia, which felt like such a victory for Jewish immigration, sanctuary, the law of return, and Jewish continuity. At the same time, she bravely fought for Ethiopian rights and even called out her Knesset colleagues for their poorly made jokes and hypocrisy regarding Israel's treatment of refugees from Ukraine versus those from Ethiopia, stating, "We must also work to advance the immigration of Jews from Ethiopia who are also fleeing a war. It was important for me to hold up a mirror to their faces, even more so as someone who believes in all different parts of Israel's society and tribes." Israel has long suffered jokes, stereotypes, and glass ceilings with every wave of immigration, often seen in satire, film, and poetry. But to me, Pnina Tamano-Shata stands out as someone who was willing to confront it head-on in government.
I think that all three of these stories of Natan Sharansky, Ovadia Yosef, and Pnina Tamano-Shata highlight the important contributions that immigrants have made to Israeli society. When looking at the reverse story, it is important to note how Israeli immigrants have made crucial contributions to their new home countries. Over the decades, hundreds of thousands of Israeli citizens have also chosen to leave Israel, whether for reasons of economic opportunity, security concerns, or a perceived breach of trust between the government and its citizens. At the same time, Israeli immigration to North America has highlighted the wonderful capability of the Jewish diaspora communities to welcome Israelis, support them in day schools and like-minded organizations, and offer a sense of belonging. Likewise, Jewish day schools, camps, and organizations have so benefited over the years from having Israeli staff and children who can share their firsthand experiences and memories with diaspora Jewry. Can we even imagine what Jewish life would be like in North America without Israelis' contributions?
Yeah, I know I couldn't. Likewise, we know of individuals from countries around the world who come to Israel just for a temporary period to support the state in its time of need, and then they return to their homes in the diaspora. It was very common for Jews to spend a year volunteering and living on a kibbutz during Israel's early years. While they supported Israel's farming, they gained an appreciation for Israeli socialist communal living and its culture. We also know of volunteers in times of war. One memoir of Dr. Krasna from New York describes the volume of Israelis at the airport begging for a seat so that they could join their units. He writes about the end of the Vietnam War, saying, "What a difference from the scenes Americans witnessed of people rushing to get on the last helicopter leaving Saigon, to leave a country at war. Here, our boys are begging to be allowed to return to their country at war." As a military surgeon, he was posted to Tel Shomer with other American doctors, where he treated the injured from the front. He recalls asking himself on the plane ride home, "What do you say to the Israeli patients and doctors when you leave to go back to your safe, quiet country? How do you overcome the feeling of guilt that these young men almost died protecting the Jewish state for us all, while you returned to the safety of your home?" We learn from these stories that a sense of belonging or guilt doesn't necessarily fuel individual choices about immigration, and that people can contribute to their homeland in meaningful ways without having to live there.
While most learn about the ways of Aliyah in broad brushstrokes that paint the push and pull factors of immigrants in largely homogeneous descriptions, we find that when we dig into people's individual stories and their choices, there are those who stand out as separate or remarkable in comparison to others who came at the same time from the same countries. While groups of immigrants can share common experiences of immigration, common challenges, and share culture from their country of origin, what individuals choose to do with their lives once they come to Israel or leave it may be shaped by those, but not defined by those characteristics. People are driven by their values, ideology, vision, individuality, and choices they make for their individual and collective future. As you, our dear listeners, consider the push and pull factors, including waxing and waning moments of violent anti-Semitism that may have caused your ancestors to relocate, and that might cause you to make a choice to relocate, we thank you for listening to Israel's Immigration and Emigration, Homogeneous Waves or Individual Choices. Please visit our websites, heartstance.org and tgdconsulting.org to download our Family and Educator Guide with links to examples of individual stories of immigration, resources, and discussion prompts. Thanks for listening.